Good morning. Um, yeah, it's been a while, unfortunately. I originally recorded this flight on January 30th. I meant to edit it quickly, but I got so busy and tied up elsewhere that I never came back to it. I just finished my successful play on the LaGuardia in Tower Simulator 3, where I kind of recorded both screens at the same time so you could kind of see everything, and it went kind of smoothly, and I think I did okay in there. Not great, but I think I did okay. In this, I thought it would be kind of fun to fly into LaGuardia. Unfortunately, I didn't realize that the default airport is not bespoke right now in the game, so it looks kind of trash. But I still thought it would be kind of fun to fly in. I do typically fly in real world weather and real world traffics, and unfortunately, my playtime is late at night, so we fly in late at night. It was an interesting approach that I took because of the wind and the direction. I had to kind of come up from the south and then loop over and bank in from the left after coming up and around. It was kind of a weird approach. I don't remember the name of it, but it was an RNAV approach. They didn't have ILS on this side, but this is where the wind was coming from. So this was my only option. I play the game with an Xbox 360 controller. I've called it out before, simply for comfort, because sitting in my chair, it's easier to have my hand resting in my lap, or it's easier to access the keyboard from the controller and all of that. But typically, I'll have my hand down on my lap. It's just more comfortable. I did have a joystick for a long time, many years, but when it was sitting on the desk, it was elevated way too high, and it just was uncomfortable on my wrist to hold it, or my elbow. Just created bad pressure points. I tried getting a board and laying it across the armrests on my desk, but then I can't move properly, so the Xbox controller became easier. But in playing certain flights like this, and if you go back to my early flight simulator videos where I'm talking about the sensitivity stuff, was it brutal trying to control some of those planes and jets. And it still is with the controller, but they've balanced it out enough that airliners are much easier, and more sluggish planes, like the default turboprop and the Cessnas and stuff, they work just fine. So I still fly that route. But on the RNAV approach with the wind, I'm not exactly the most experienced because I have not had a lot of time to fly in a while. So I came into this without having flown properly for a couple of months. So I was a little nervous about coming in. I typically have a problem of coming in a little bit fast. And then not flaring enough, so I either bounce a little bit. Most of my landings are normal, they're okay, but I do tend to bounce a little bit. In this one, I had a very decent landing, though I kind of did the opposite, where I came in a little bit too slow because I was aware of the short runway, and I flared a little bit too late, but I didn't bounce and I didn't stick it like a lawn dart, so I was fairly pleased with this landing overall once I got up at the airport, as you'll see. But the approach was pretty. I got to see some of the skyline as it came around. And then I was pretty busy in the cockpit trying to carefully manage my speed. And then I took off auto throttle and managed with just the thrust levers to keep my speed fairly close to what the system was calling out the landing. I went a little under that, trying to give myself room to flare, so that when I did flare and I lifted up a little bit or I slowed my descent, I wouldn't float down half the runway, which happens if I don't bounce too hard. But in this case, I managed to flare just a bit late, but it was okay because I was already coming in at a decent angle. There were a few issues with me having to bank a little harder to the side than I would normally want to, and that's simply because I was fighting a little bit of the wind, and I was doing a bit more maneuvering than I have done in a little while with the airline. I used to do some of these RNAV approaches because I thought they were a ton of fun. My favorite one was coming into I think it was somewhere in New Zealand. It might have been Wellington. I don't remember, but it was a gorgeous approach. You kind of corkscrewed down into this valley, but that one was at the height of my playtime, and it was a wonderful approach. It was so much fun. I think I recorded that maybe, but this one was a little rougher. But it was serviceable, it was survivable. I wouldn't have damaged the airplane, I don't think. So I'm pleased with this, and it was kind of fun coming into LaGuardia and then having to pull off and taxi, though I am a little confused by the taxi route it gave me, because when I looked at the map, it wanted to route me like halfway around the airport to get on the taxiway right in front of me. I sort of cheated and popped over that. I know I shouldn't have, but it was late and I needed to get to the gate so I could finish. I don't think there was a proper route for me to connect over. The taxiways didn't link like that, but it was all tarmac, so I kind of cheated. My bad. But it was a ton of fun. So we should be nearing my landing here. I'll be quiet for a moment and let that happen. So as you can see, a little wibbly wobbly, having to kind of correct one direction to the other, but I was fairly close to center. I landed a little early, like I said, but I came in fairly smooth. I didn't bounce, the plane didn't go thunk, and I didn't stick the nose in the ground like a lawn dart. Unfortunately, Flight Simulator broke after this with one of their big updates where now I've basically tanked my in-game graphics 200-300% down from where they were at in this video flight. I've updated drivers, but the FPS is still just not good. I don't know what they've done, but it's very horrible to try and play right now with the FPS the way it is. It just tanks on takeoff. I've dropped the load on demand. I've dropped anti-aliasing. I've dropped airplane labels like you can see here on the ground where it labels the other planes. I've turned all that off. I've gone to AI traffic at 30% instead of all real time. And the game is still just all over the place. And it's weird because it just doesn't send data to my GPU when I watch Resource Monitor and some of the Intel tools. I don't see my GPU getting utilized, and it's always at critical moments. So up in the sky, I'm pushing 60 plus FPS at a 5K resolution. Coming down to land at the runway, I'm getting 1 to 2 FPS. So I'm continuing to play with the settings to try and get it, and I really hope Microsoft fixes it, but that is what it is. Anyway, I thought this would be a fun little video coming into LaGuardia and showing the arrival at the airport I've been controlling. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.